You want to find your tribe of raving fans. I'm going to help you do it. This is the Digging Deep podcast with 360 Media, where we help you do better business. Hey everybody, this is Justin Lamb from 360 Media, and we're on episode 2 of Digging Deep, where we help business owners build better businesses through education. Today I have with me an avid Manchester United fan. He is the author of 7 books, including an award-winning novel, 1,000 Bayonets, that turned into a screenplay shown in Times Square, New York. He's currently launching a new venture, Ghostwriter Co.com, and I am super happy to have him here. He's been a member of my BNI chapter, and since I joined in 2018, so I'm super excited. Mr. Joel Mark Harris, how are you?
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here as well and ready.
Awesome. So let's back up a little bit. So how did you get into copywriting in the first place?
Sure. So that's a long and very winding road. I first went to Langara for journalism. I wanted to, write. So I think that, all through my different career paths, the one thing that has been constant is the writing. I've always loved it. So
then what is it about writing that you like so much?
I think it's being able to clarify my thoughts, to be able to really figure out what I'm trying to say and I'm able to say it in writing in a clear, concise way, and I'm not kind of bound by any rules, and I can go back and edit it after, and that will really,
for the most part, we don't get to edit a lot of the stuff in my head, and so sometimes the things come out and you go, holy shit, and you go, oh, I should have censored that. But so then, if you liked writing and you went to Langara for it, were you also into writing when you were really young?
Oh yeah, so ever since I can remember, I loved writing, especially fiction. But I love news, and I love the way that it's portrayed in the media, and I love the newspapers. It's a kind of dying profession right now, but it was something I was always fascinated as a kid.
Okay, and so what was life like as a kid? I mean, writing isn't really a generally accepted kind of hobby as you were a kid. So were you picked on? What was it?
I mean, I had two different sets of friends. I had definitely my writer friends, my more geeky friends, if you will. But I was also a bit of a jock because I love sports. I was fairly good at soccer, and so I really were able to navigate the two types of people, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And so, as you've evolved, what type of writing do you currently like to do?
I like everything, honestly. I obviously still write fiction a lot. I like to write commentary about world events. I love to write about marketing. So I'd say a very wide variety of writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with that, how important is writing and copy per se in the business world? How do you find your words can persuade or persuade an individual one way or the other?
I'd say it's super important because, with all the talk about video and podcasting, I still believe that copy is still the number one way of persuading people, especially online. Because when people are thinking about clicking or viewing or listening to something, what is the thing that gets them actually interested? It's the title, it's the headline, it's what is the podcast called.
And so then the question is then, how do you, if you're ghostwriting, ghostwriting is different from copywriting in the sense, how does a person who is separated from that individual, how are you able to distill their voice into a piece so that it doesn't sound off-brand?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's really about getting into that person's head. So you usually have to spend some time, you have to interview them, you have to figure out what their point of view is and what their relationship to the subject matter is.
And I mean, what is the use for copyright, I guess ghostwriting now in today's market? what is the advantage of having a ghostwriter? What does it help with?
Sure. So for me, it's really about thought leadership. I really believe that it's important to stand out in the marketplace, especially with so many different marketing messages out there, right? You're bombarded by Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising. So really, ghostwriting, what it does is it allows the person who has a distinct point of view, has a distinct message to state to the world. It really allows him to communicate that to his audience. And usually as a ghostwriter, what you do is you talk to that person and they're not really sure about their own messaging sometimes, or a lot of the time. And what the ghostwriter do is able to parse that out of that person and help them convey that message.
And so for us in a brand strategy sense, what we try to do is we like to do that heavy lifting, try to get into the head of people. Through interview process to distilling their core ideals, and then being able to pass that on to somebody like yourself so that you could go and run with it. And I think from a brand's perspective and from agencies, I think that copywriting relationship, once it's forged and it's strong, I think you get a really good feel for that. So then tell me a little bit about your book, 1,000 Bayonets.
Sure.
So how do you go from written book to screenplay?
Yeah, so this film, again, I love stories, obviously, and so I love storytelling in different methods, different genres, and so I've always loved film. I've always been fascinated by it, and it just happened I met this director through playing soccer, funny enough, and he was super interested, and he needed a story that he wanted to tell, and I told him about, I'm a published author and this is my story, and he was really interested in it, and so we together crafted the screenplay. I did the writing, and he kind of he had some feedback about it, and because what I wrote was very novel, like, so it'd be the writer would the character would say everything out loud. And what he taught me is it's really about the looks, right? It's about the visuals, about making things visually appealing, and you don't have to explain, like, I feel sad.
Right, so you're inferring it. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so how does it get from that screenplay onto the New York? Was it in a theater, or was it like just out in the square? Like how did
yeah,
it work?
they built bleachers in summertime, and so they had
Big red ones that are already
yeah. I think so. I think they brought some out, and they just had like a big screen out there, and so it was pretty cool. It was really, really great experience, because people, there's like thousands of people walking by, and a lot of them stopped and would watch, and some of them would continue, some of them would watch the entire thing. So it was great.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so that novel in itself is on Amazon, right? And are all 7 of your books are on Amazon? Okay, so go to Amazon.com if you want to find out a little bit more about that. So Ghostwriter Co. And that's your company. It's ghostwritersandco.com. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So it really comes out of, again, like that thought leadership. I wanted to be able to provide a unique way of marketing, because ultimately it's a marketing tool for businesses. That's my background, and that's the people I specialize in helping, and so it's a way for them to really get that message out there and really do it in a very concise way, because the people who I generally help are super busy, entrepreneurs, business people, and they want to write a book, or they want to get their message out through blogging and through various writing, and so they basically hire me to tell that message, and I'm able to spread that across various platforms.
Amazing. And so for those people listening and for people watching, one of the things as a content creator that we run into is producing a mass amount of content. And if you've noticed, like litter the internet with that stuff, between this podcast that's just starting, some of our videos, Instagram TV, and of course, when you're super busy and you have all this material, sometimes curating that material is really difficult. But having that available and condensed down, then passed on to somebody like you, who gets to see, hear, and maybe be incepted with my voice, and however sexy it is, that they're going to be able to help me distill all of that down into a book. So stay tuned, because eventually a book is going to come your way, and hopefully I'm going to bring value to some of you guys. And if you're getting value out of this podcast, like please follow, subscribe. It helps. Leave comments. Love to find more ways to introduce new content to people. So tell me a little bit about maybe. Do you have any tips on, say, a person who may be listening? How do you quickly improve your writing? If they say not ready to find a ghostwriter, and or get copywriting done, what's a quick way for a person to kind of adapt that?
Yeah, sure. So there's unfortunately no magic bullet. I wish there was. I wish I could just snap my fingers and tell people like this is the way. But it's really about reading the people that you find most inspiring. For me, Ryan Holiday is one of those people. So subscribe to their email list, right? Read the books, read the blogs, and then just kind of try and emulate them as much as possible. And then once you master that, you can find your own voice. And so kind of use what you've learned there and make it your own.
And so how does an app like Grammarly affect you? Yeah. Is it worth it? Is it useful?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, it's such a time saver. I definitely recommend it to everybody. The worst editors is yourself, right? Because you always miss your own mistakes. You always, bypass those simple spelling, grammar mistakes. So Grammarly really helps you with that. I would always encourage people to get other people to look at your work, because everyone has blind spots and it's so easy just to miss those things. So definitely get a proofreader, get somebody to look it over before publishing.
Grammarly sucks on my phone, because every time I try to type in a word, it changes the word completely and it can't, and it doesn't have a way for me to just bypass the word, like names. Oh.
Well, you can program it, right, to automatically.
I don't have time to program it. God damn. Just wanted to work. At least on the Apple keyboard, it'll show the word that I want, and just forget it. Just keep going. Grammarly, type the word, doesn't have a way for me to bypass it. So
if it's a common word that you use all the time, just go into the back end and say ignore all. Quick tip. There you go.
Okay, and so tell me a little bit about how business is. What is the industry like? I mean, over the last, I'd say, decade, I've seen the writing industry as a conglomerate really shift from journalism, and magazines to, everything's on the web, and it seems like magazines are dying. So what's going on?
Well, it's a bloodbath. There's no mistaking that. But content marketing, content is alive and well. I would say it's more important now than it ever was before. I would say that, advertising, pay-per-click is getting less effective. You see, Google ads are more expensive these days. Facebook and Instagram, you're competing, heavily against huge companies, right? People are dumping tons of money into them. So I would say content marketing really it's still the future. And I think that you have to find your own voice, you have to find your own niche, and you have to find your own audience. And there's no quick way of doing that, unfortunately. It's really about just, kind of figuring out your own pathway and being yourself and being true to yourself and to your own voice, and just continue. And there's going to be some dark days where you're like, I got no likes, no views on my posts, but you just have to keep going. And it's a long-term strategy, but in the end, it's super effective, because once you kind of reach that tipping point, then you are golden, because people are going to be listening to you, because you are so different from your competition, because you have that unique point of view. And it's going to be what makes you stand out. It's going to be what makes people come to your website and hire you, whatever your industry is, over other people.
Yeah, and for us, like, we spend a lot of time doing that, trying to find the voice of the people that we serve.
Yeah.
And content is king, but content isn't just king. Good content is king, because a lot of people putting a lot of shit out there on the internet. They're not adding value, and there's a misconception about beating their chest and telling you what they do for a living and their product and services. But that's not really the full game, is it?
No, for sure. So it's interesting. Over the last couple years, we've seen that the blog posts that do the best are the ones that are a little bit longer. They're a lot more in depth. Those, I used to be able to write 500 word blog posts, and they used to do, okay, if not great. Now you find that 500 word blog posts, they don't even make a dent. So the sweet spot seems to be for Google is about 1,000 to 1,200. But you're seeing longer blog posts, even up to 10,000 words, which takes a huge amount of resources, a huge amount of writing. But those really are the blog posts that are going to stay around.
But that stuff changes all the time. Like, today it's 10,000, next week it could be 500 again, because Google likes to dick with you like that.
Yeah, they do, but it all comes down to what you were saying earlier about value. Are you creating value for your customer, right? And if you create that value is going to be good from now and 10 years from now. So the algorithms are going to change, but if you're always creating that content that people want to read, then you're always going to be good. Yeah. So don't focus on the algorithm so much. Focus on your customers, and you can never lose with that strategy.
Yeah, I totally think that's the case. And I think a lot of people have this false perception that as long as they're putting out content, that it's going to turn itself over, and they're so short term about it, and they're posting online, and they're not getting traction, and they're wondering what the heck happens. Yeah. But they forget that part of that game isn't the immediate response, it's the long tail. It's the searchability. And for us, when we're helping clients putting out content all the time, in different ways, different mediums, whether it's through video, through transcribed audio, through blog posts, whatever it is that we're helping our clients do, the curation of content is really geared so that when a person types in a subject or a term that they're looking for, that it's embedded in your stuff. And I think a lot of people, kind of get stuck with content and or paralyzed because of how much work goes into the writing of, right? So it's really about a proliferation game. It's how much can you push out at any given time that's still quality content. And so for Ghostwriters Co, are you solely focused on, say, just book writing and like maybe lead gen articles, or are you open to doing copywriting for blogs?
For sure, it's more about the client. So who we help the most, who we specialize in helping the most, is that business, is that entrepreneur who just doesn't have time to create that content, but who has great ideas and maybe needs a little help in formulating them, but who really wants to be that thought leader in that industry.
Okay, so here's an interesting question. So all the rage now, you go into a landing site and they have a pop-up box that says, I've got a lead gen for you.
Yeah.
How valuable is that lead gen? And what do you think are some downfalls that you've seen where people create content that may be not useful or self-serving, or have other ulterior motives? Like, how do you feel that translates to the website?
Well, I mean, these days you see everybody, you have a landing page, exactly, subscribe now, get my free ebook, right? So it's still effective, it still works, which is why people are doing it. Obviously, it's not as effective as it once was, but again, it's about becoming that unique thought leader, right? And so it's about finding what is different. Don't do just like 10 marketing tips on SEO. That's not going to work, right? Really figure out who your audience is and what makes you different and unique.
Now you mentioned ebooks. So now, with Kindle, Audible, and all these things coming into play, how valuable is it for a person to be published via ebook or via traditional methods? Like, is there a difference? What are some things that people might want to consider or look out for?
I think there's definitely a difference in perception, right? So a more traditional author has that authority, and that's important, especially if you're looking at getting on the TED stage, if you're looking for more speaking engagements. For solopreneurs, it's definitely helpful. In terms of lead gen, it doesn't really matter. I think people these days, they're savvy enough to know that the book quality doesn't really matter. Indie authors, ebooks, they used to have this stigma that it's just it's not up to par. It's not as good as a real traditional book. But I think nowadays people don't really see a difference. There's not much advantages apart from what I just mentioned in terms of, are you traditionally published or are you self-published through Amazon? There's some very high quality ebooks out there.
And so how about the financial outlay? Yeah. Like, is it how much, and because I don't really know, it's not my world, and you've published books, how much of a financial outlay do you have to put into a published book, and how do you get picked up by a publisher?
Yeah, so a traditional publisher, they would take on all the risk and all the cost, right? So they would do the editing, they would do the graphics for you, they would do all the distribution, the marketing, right? And you would take just a small percentage, sometimes 1 or 2% of the entire book, right? With ebooks, with self-publishing, you are basically taking on all the risks. So you have to create the cover, you have to do all the marketing for you. And so I would say that, but of course on the flip side, you also get about 70% of the revenue, right? So it's, I guess, about risk and reward. Traditional publishing obviously takes a lot longer. You have to jump through a lot more hoops.
You have to be careful of more spelling mistakes.
Yeah. Though there doesn't seem to be much difference. If you look at a traditionally published book these days, you can catch some spelling mistakes. They don't have as many editors as they used to. It used to go through 10 different editors. Now you have one editor if you're lucky.
And so let's back up a little bit. So self-publishing books, you mentioned getting it on Amazon. Is that a hard process? How do you get it up there?
No, super easy.
Super easy.
It's a matter of just uploading, and then click, you're done. It takes maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, at the most.
And is there an ideal length, an ideal price point that people get? Or?
So 99 cents is popular for ebook, $4.99 for sometimes, and then about 15, 20 bucks for an actual hard copy. But what people are actually doing now, they've been doing it for a couple of years now, but they've been pricing the book actually a little bit more expensive, but then giving them additional resources like videos. So people will be 30, 40 bucks, even $50, and then you'd get a free course or a free video series with your purchase.
Yeah, that's an interesting method.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like to try to summarize a bunch of things, but thank you so much for being part of it. I think for anybody who is publishing or thinking of publishing or trying to figure out their content engine, I think that we found some real value there. What I want to leave people with is, what is a favorite resource to you? It could be anything.
Sure.
But what is a favorite resource that you like to go to?
Sure. Probably one of my favorite websites is Copyblogger, because they have a little bit of everything on there. They have I think something crazy 4,000 articles about SEO, about copywriting, about publishing, the whole gambit about if you're interested in writing, I would start there. They have free training, that's just anything, So that's definitely a great resource. I think that has everything actually.
Awesome. So for those of you who have lots of time on your hand and willing to write, willing to read, and not do the work that you need to be doing to turn a profit, go to Copyblogger, because apparently that's a good resource.
Yeah.
But for those of you guys who are on your lunch break, want to kind of check it out, that's a good resource for you. Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, because the next episode we're going to be meeting a really interesting entrepreneur as well. But thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much. If you found value, please follow, subscribe, find us on Spotify if you are finding this on YouTube. And I appreciate your time, and I hope we're bringing you value. Have a great day.